You've probably all seen that the patch notes for the 1.1 Incursion update have released yesterday. A lot of new things are on the way, but most of what was mentioned is stuff that we already got to hear during their livestream where they showed off the gameplay of the Incursion. However, there are still a few things that I believe are worth mentioning. For example, the Dark Zone rank requirement that you will need to buy items from the Dark Zone vendors. Those will change. The superior items can now be bought at Dark Zone rank 15. The high-end items are divided. The level 30 high-end items can be bought at Dark Zone rank 25, and the item level 31 high-end items can be bought at Dark Zone rank 40. So overall, the requirement goes down. However, Massive will also be adding new items in some of the shops, and those will require you to be Dark Zone rank 75 or Dark Zone rank 90. This was not listed in the patch notes, but it was said during the State of the Game livestream that happened yesterday.
Also, the Dark Zone ranks, so right now we have Dark Zone rank 30 and 50 gear.
Yeah.
We're kind of shuffling around how that works. Instead of rank 30, it's going to be rank 15 for the superior items. Level 30 gear is going to be rank 25 instead of 50. And level 31 gear is going to be rank 40 instead of 50.
30, 40, 50, and
some other ones
and
above
maybe
that.
some more above that, yes.
There are going to be ranks above 50, but we can't
Yes.
say, well...
I mean, we can. It's just, yeah, there's gonna be also items for rank 75 and rank 90.
That is not what this video is about though, because what I wanted to talk about today are the changes that they are making to crafting. For those who aren't up to date yet, basically they're putting a very heavy nerf on the efficiency of crafting. The patch notes read that instead of 5 green materials, you will now need 10 to craft a blue one. And you will also need 15 blues to make one high-end crafting material piece. Whereas in the past, that of course also used to be 5. In addition to that, it now also takes 10 high-end crafting materials to craft one item instead of 8. Basically, converting lower tier materials into higher tier materials is going to be a lot less efficient. You will lose a lot more in the process. That isn't where it stops, however, because as the game stands right now, you get 2 high-end crafting materials back when you deconstruct any high-end item. But they're also reducing that to only 1 high-end item, so the amount you get back from deconstructing is going to be lower, and the amount that you need is going to be much higher. I'm assuming that the reasoning behind this is because they want to slow down the progress that the players are making. In their opinion, players are getting the gear a little bit too fast. But I don't think that this is a good solution for it in any way or form, because not only will this introduce a few new issues to the game, which I'll talk about very soon, but what is probably way worse is that it will exaggerate the already existing issues with the endgame and really turn this game into that crafting material farmer simulator that I previously talked about. To recap the current issues that I have with the endgame is that the only way to go about getting the best gear in this game is to craft it with item level 31 high-end blueprints that can be bought from either the Phoenix Credit vendor at the base of operations or alternatively at the Phoenix Credit vendor in the Dark Zone. But that's only if you, of course, are willing to spend hours and hours walking around searching for some of that Division tech. The only way to reliably get that best loot in the game is through that crafting, because the chance of you actually looting a high-end level 31 item, that's just incredibly slim, let alone that the item that you get is something that you're looking for in the first place and that it also has good stat rolls. Even the rewards that you get for completing the most difficult activities in this game are not item level 31, and they do not reward you with the stuff that, let's say, an endgame player is looking for. This results in everything that the player gets as a reward for doing these activities and basically playing the game is something that he doesn't want, and it ends up being deconstructed for crafting materials. It turns the rewards in this game that you should be excited about into yet another 2 fabric pieces or maybe electronics. It makes it quite boring, and personally I feel like I'm just scraping panties off the floor and just dumping them one by one into a fruit machine. I've made this comparison before. The panties are of course the crafting materials and the fruit machine is the crafting table. And yes, I would say that the crafting table is indeed the equivalent of a fruit machine. Chances of me getting a backpack that fully fits my build, that's like 0.019%. And the average player would spend about 40,000 high-end crafting materials just to craft that item once. And that's just for one backpack, and we haven't even looked at the rest. That's not an exaggeration, this is literally a fruit machine. And the newer update will really start to shine some light onto this issue, especially with the rewards, because as I said, the vendors in the Dark Zone will sell some items that will require your character to be level 90. And I can assure you that some of those items will be high-end blueprints. And again, the best way to go about getting the most powerful items will be through that crafting. Thus, everybody will be trying to get those crafting materials, and the whole cycle starts all over. And that same cycle is going to bring the same problems. All the other rewards and loot in this game become unexciting, and players will turn it into crafting materials anyway. The only difference with this patch is that you get less crafting materials for deconstructing items, and you get less for converting, so the incentive to actually play the game for those rewards will be even smaller. This patch doesn't fix the endgame issues, it just makes the only reliable option to get the best gear in the game an even more time-consuming process. But those things that I just mentioned, those are just quality of life issues more than anything, especially compared to what I'm about to say next. Because these issues only apply to basically those players who are the top 1 or the top 2% of this game. It only applies to those who have pretty much played this game every day, probably abused some of the exploits like Hornet or Bullet King, and they have grinded this game out. The problems that I just mentioned apply to those people. For pretty much everyone else, the loot that drops will still be, decent and maybe even rewarding in some cases because they do not have anything better yet. But if you're sitting there on your chair and maybe you have a job, maybe you have a kid, maybe you've got both, and maybe you've just got other things to do than playing The Division, and you're sitting there and you're thinking to yourself, haha, this patch will not affect me because, these are only endgame problems. I'm not going to be affected by this for I don't know how long. But, buddy, I've got some bad news for you. Because out of all the people here, out of everyone that's playing this game, you are going to be hit the hardest with this patch. Because let me tell you, the players that grinded this game, got to level 30 on the first day, used the exploits to farm crafting materials literally all day. Basically, people like me, we are not going to care that much for the crafting material nerf. I'm not saying it's not going to hurt us in the long run. It's going to hurt everybody in the long run. I'm not going to, sit here and say that that's not going to happen. But most of my friends that I play with, they're literally sitting on 999 of every high-end crafting material in the game. Except for high-end Division tech. And basically, they can craft hundreds upon hundreds of weapons and backpacks and gloves. And they can do that for months on end before they ever run out. And this new update is going to create a very big segregation between players, bigger than that there already was. I don't think this is a good way of handling things. Just imagine that the next thing that happens is that people find a very fast or even exploity way to level up to level 99 in the Dark Zone and, to buy those blueprints. And then the developers decide to patch the exploit, which is good, that's a good thing for the game. But on top of that, they also increase the amount of experience that is needed to get to level 90. And that is very bad, and that's the equivalent of what they're doing right now. Again, it isn't going to hurt those who are already level 90. It will not hurt those who grinded or exploited their way up. It will just hurt the ones who didn't, who don't have all that time to play, and who aren't maxed out on crafting materials. Now, a lot of the times I get to hear when I make a video like this that I'm a whiner, or people say that, I do not want to work for my stuff in games, and I personally find that to be one of the weakest arguments on the internet. I do not mind working my damn ass off for anything. But that only really works if there's somewhat of a guaranteed reward. Right now, the rewards are the items that will inevitably turn into crafting materials, which pretty much makes it a complete gamble whether you get anything that you want at all. I guess the goal here is to make players play more and longer, but the truth is because the gameplay will be so unrewarding, people will actually start to play less. I know that I'm speaking for myself when I say that. I'm seriously considering right now to just ignore all of the content loot-wise with this patch and wait for the next update before I even begin to gear up again. I'm pretty sure that I can do all the content anyways, and this way I'm not spending my hard-earned crafting materials on something that will be pretty much irrelevant 2 months from now. The only way that I can see this work is if they also dramatically increase the drop rate of yellow items so that on average, players are still able to acquire the same amount of crafting materials from deconstructing items as that they would right now. Not because they would get the same per item, but because they would have more items. That will not only keep things fair, but it will also increase the odds that you actually find a good high-end item. You know, after all, it's supposed to be a loot game. And that is pretty much all that I wanted to share with you today. As always, let me know what you guys think, and I will see you all later. Or like they say, in the Netherlands. Zie je later!